Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and tell you whether or not we think it's worth the cost. In this episode, we'll be playing Smalland Survive the Wilds, the open-world survival crafting game where you will explore the world as a small woodland creature. Now, the first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, in Smalland, it is currently in early access and available on PC for $25. Now, if you guys want to save money on games, you should check out Humble Bundle in the description below. Humble Bundle will not only help to give you a discount on games sometimes, but will also help charity and support this channel. Everything you purchase on Humble Bundle will go towards helping a charity, helping our channel, and giving you some kind of a discount if there's a discount running on that game, which they have tons of discounts that Steam does not all the time. And again, if you want to save money, just check out Humble Bundle down below by clicking the link. But what exactly is Smalland? Well, Smalland is a game that appears to be trying to take a similar theme from something like Grounded and the more traditional RPG elements from games like Valheim, and then meshes them together. You'll start out your adventure by being given a quest to save your king from a deadly illness. To do this, you'll need to open a locked chest that contains a magical potion so strong that it can cure any illness in the world. Unfortunately, that chest is locked and you'll need to find the clover key, which has been stolen in order to open it. In order to get your hands on it, you'll have to venture out into the vast unknown wilderness of Smalland. This is where the game really starts to open up to the player and lets you decide what you want to do. Now, there is a guiding questline that essentially tells you to go over to this area and get geared enough to take down a boss before you continue onwards, much like you would in Valheim. However, if you want to go off the beaten path and adventure out into different areas, some of which can be extremely difficult, then you certainly can, as the game will not try to stop you. In total, there are currently 4 major biomes with unique themes for the player to experience. Each of these biomes have one of the main bosses tied to it and can be completed in any order. However, you'll have to be careful as each one of these biomes has increasingly difficult mobs, so if you go straight from the starting zone biome over to the last biome in the game, then you will likely be killed almost instantly by every creature that inhabits it.
I just got hit by like 4 of them all at one time, and it just brought me to 0.
Dead too.
Well,
With that being said, let's talk about gear progression. The game allows you to craft weapons, tools, and structures on your own, but requires you to craft armor at a specific vendor in a specific zone every time you want it. Some of these vendors are just standing around waiting for you to show up to them, while others are locked behind specific boss progressions. Each one of these NPCs, however, will have items near them that are required for you to make the gear that they can craft. So for an example, if you want to craft, say, the bee armor, you'll find the crafter near the beehive where all the bee ingredients are that are going to be required to craft said armor. I really do hate to keep using comparisons since some of you may not have played games like Valheim, but the gear progression and storyline progression are all extremely similar to how you do it in Valheim. Now, as far as the building systems go, the devs of this game actually designed a really unique and high quality of life feature for the players to enjoy. This comes in the form of building a base that can teleport around the map. You can do this by simply building atop a great tree, which can be interacted with to allow you to teleport your base to any other great tree in the world. Great trees also offer you protection since no bugs or other animals seem to go up there and attack your base. Of course, this won't stop you from building anywhere else in the world if you want to, but it is highly recommended and encouraged that you do build on top of these great trees since it is just such a huge quality of life improvement. Probably the biggest benefit of being able to teleport your base to any great tree on the map is that you can teleport it to the closest great tree to the biome you're currently doing things in. So if you're in the swamp and want to have your base near the swamp, you can do that, or if you're in the starting biome and want to have your base near that, you can do that too. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the combat. The combat is fairly fleshed out, even if it is a little bit clunky at this point in time, with it having 3 major mechanics. The first mechanic is the dodge mechanic, which gives the player a small window of invincibility and encourages the player to use skill rather than brute force when it comes to avoiding boss attacks. Next is the blocking and attacking mechanic, which both reduces the damage and allows you to attack them with a heavy or light swing, as well as aerial attacks depending on the situation that you're in. Finally is the damage type mechanic that each weapon can do. For an example, some creatures will be weak to things like piercing, slashing, or blunt damage, which can make fights dramatically easier to take on. This encourages the player to experiment with different types of weapons rather than simply picking what is quote-unquote the meta weapon and then just sticking with it. So now let's move over to the pros and cons section of the video. First up for the pros is that the tutorial in the game was pretty useful and informative, even if it was still currently missing a few major points. The way this works is you basically just interact with these owl statues near the start of the game, and each one will give you a little tip about how to play. Unfortunately, the game does not teach you that you can dodge, roll, and block, as I did not figure this out until I was on the final boss of the game and standing around at my great tree, which I was pretty pissed off about.
Are you fucking kidding me? You're telling me I could have blocked this whole fucking time?
Next up is that the mounts and wingsuits felt meaningful and fun to use, other than the lizard and spider mounts, which I'm sure will be fixed in future updates. The reason these ones in particular were not fun is because they're supposed to be able to climb walls, but they seem to glitch out quite a bit and aren't able to go up straight walls. So either way, I'm sure they'll be improved upon as the game has more time in development, but right now they just don't feel great to actually use, as they're not really as fast as the cricket or as fast as the dragonfly that you can get later on, and I know it's technically called a damselfly, but either way, just know that the mounts and the wingsuits are still really fun to use. I mean, they even have a grappling hook that lets you swing from ledges, and it's just absolutely incredibly fun to get around the map once you have some of these things unlocked. And finally is that the atmosphere and immersion that this game offers is extremely well done, as it truly makes the player feel like you are a fairy running around a woodland creature's world. Everything from swinging around trees to running on branches to fighting bugs that are bigger than you just really helps to immerse you. It never really felt like I was, playing in this cartoony world. It felt like I was an actual fairy creature running around the world that was so small and had to actually engage with what was going on around me. I mean, graphically speaking, most things were pretty well done, even if they weren't perfect, especially for a smaller dev team. Alrighty, now it's time for the cons. First up for the cons is that the game is currently still pretty buggy and is easy to abuse when it comes to some of the mechanics. For example, I got stuck in rocks all of the time when I was using certain mounts, or sometimes I would just get stuck floating in the air, as it happened to both me and my friend while playing. And you can also abuse the fact that you can log out of the game to teleport to wherever your spawn is set anytime you want, while also keeping all the materials you gathered. This made it so that I basically never had to walk home and could just log out anytime I wanted to travel there. Next up is that the game starts to get this feeling of a power creep around the midway point. I don't want to spoil it all for you, but what I will say is that by the time you hit the end game, it feels like your gear is just overpowering, like you don't even have to do mechanics when you fight bosses, and you can just sit there and button mash them to death. Either way, I think this definitely needs some work, as the balancing can be improved upon here, and that would pretty much solve the problem for me, but I think there's high hopes of this being fixed in the future, so we'll just have to give it some time. After that is that the game just lacks really any sense of replayability. There's no difficulty options, and there's no real value other than building a cooler base when it comes to continuing to play after you complete the main storyline. So personally, I would really like to see some additional either endgame content or at least some difficulty options where I can make things even harder for me, as right now there really just isn't much to offer on this front. Finally is one that is probably just a personal preference, but that's the fact that there is no leveling or skill-based system for you to engage with. To me, this is a massive missed opportunity. The whole idea of being able to have a skill tree or a talent tree or magical abilities when playing as a fairy-like creature just seems like a no-brainer to me. And maybe they did this at one point in the past and they decided they didn't like it, but for me this would be a great addition to add some more depth to the game and encourage the player to actually go level up and engage with more of the world before they just go take on the next boss after they get the best gear they possibly can. So now it's time for the rating for the game, and when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 that the game costs. So for this game in particular, in Smalland, we would want to get roughly 25 hours of enjoyment out of the $25 cost of the game. And after completing and experiencing all content available within Smalland, we give it 7 out of 10 potatoes. Smalland is a beautiful game with an amazing sense of immersion that really helps to sell the player. However, it currently suffers from no replayability value and a ton of bugs. I'm sure the bugs will be polished out with time, but unfortunately, once you complete the main campaign, there just isn't a whole lot to do that feels like it's worth your time. This will probably be improved upon in the future, but for now, the game is still a great play regardless, and that's why we feel that Smalland is more than likely worth the cost. With all that being said, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more content like it. And I want to give a big shout out to our Platinum and Above channel members, which currently include Caustic FPV, Jonathan S, Gerald89, AZ Blackbird, and Jim Phillips. I'm Game Advisor, and I'll see you next time.